Howdy Beans, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Howdy Beans podcast. I'm your host, Luke the Howdy Bean. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're all good, as per usual. Today, we're going to be looking at a movie that is basically my childhood. You know, like Dinosaurs was, it introduced me to dinosaurs and all that. This movie is another one of those films that introduced me to spies and the world of espionage and James Bond and all that. And for me, this movie is probably why I love mystery, and I love like those sort of novels and those sort of films and movies like James Bond, movies like Mission Impossible, and the Tom Clancy books and things like that. I think it all, for me, this is where it started. So today we're going to be talking about Spy Kids from 2001. But before we do all of that and more, I want to do a bit of housekeeping because I like to keep my house nice and clean. So make sure that you follow me on Twitter at howdybeans_pod. If you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you listen to this on Spotify, don't forget to leave a follow and to rate the podcast 5 stars. And you can also find the Howdy Beans podcast on TikTok. Just type in the Howdy Beans podcast and you'll find me there for loads more mini side quest episodes. So I have another question. Like I did with the movie Dinosaur, when I asked you all what your favorite dinosaur is, I have another question. And this one is more so sort of just like it's a question I'm just putting out there. The question is, who didn't want to be a spy growing up? I know I did. I know growing up, I wanted to be a spy. I wanted to be that sort of international man of mystery. And like I said, this for me is where I had my introduction to the whole idea of spies. From this, I went and watched Pierce Brosnan, and Brosnan is my Bond. And I rewatched all of the Brosnan Bond movies, and I fell in love with them. And then I went back even further, and I watched the Sean Connery, the Lazenby, the Timothy Dalton, all of the other Bonds. I went to go watch them all and I fell in love with the genre, and it's nothing but just carried on ever really since, to be honest. I've just always been fascinated. So who hasn't always grown up and wanted to be a spy? When I was younger, right? So when I was sort of growing up, it was just me and my sister before my little brother was born. And my sister, being a girl and being older, she wanted to do her own thing, and like we didn't have a lot in common. So a lot of the time I was playing on my own. So I used to be very imaginative. I used to go in the garden and I used to pretend like I was a spy, like I was an adventurer. And, you'd climb up things and you would get, old like Nokia phones, or you'd just use your fingers and pretend you was on the phone and you was on a secret mission. Like I remember the once it snowed really heavily where we lived, and it sounds silly, but in the mind of a child, this is exactly what you do. So it snowed really heavily. So I remember I put my big thick coat on, and it had the sort of frilly rim around the edge, put it on over my head, and I wrapped it really, really tight, went outside, and as soon as I stepped outside and I closed that door, I was a different person, and I pretended that I was on an ice planet and that I'd been sent here because there was an evil mastermind, and I was on this planet, and I was trudging along, and I was like, I don't know where he is, I can't find him, the base must be hidden. Obviously, if the neighbours saw me, they must have thought I was crazy talking to myself in the garden. But I was just immersed in this snowy tundra. Like, to me, it wasn't the garden; it was the Arctic. Or I was on Io, one of Jupiter's moons. You know what I mean? I was just somewhere else. I was in an alien world covered in ice, and I was a spy. And I had a lot of sort of things like that when I was a kid, pretending I was a spy, pretending I was an adventurer. And as you do it when you were younger. And I feel like it all started really here with Spy Kids, because you watch Spy Kids and you think, well, they're kids. If they can be spies, I can be a spy too. And that's really my memories of this film, was just watching it, just being amazed of like, if they can do it, I can do it. I can be a spy too. Sadly, I never got to try the MI5, and I never got to be, have my license to kill, and never became James Bond. But, I do a podcast now, so it's not so bad, wins and losers, But yeah, like who didn't want to be a spy growing up? And like for me, I think it all just started from Spy Kids. Spy Kids like was really sort of the epicenter, the beginning of just wanting to watch James Bond and sort of Mission Impossible and all those other spy movies, and just fall in love with the genre and the idea and concept of being a spy and License to Kill and all that sort of jazz. So I just wanted to talk about this movie like I did with Dinosaur, like I'm going to do with next week, because it's my birthday soon, and I want to just relive that nostalgia of being a child, the funness of just not knowing what's going on in the world, not caring what's going on in the world, and all that really mattered was the screen and like movies and like things that I grew up with. And this is one of those films, so I'm really excited to get into it. So, without further ado, let's talk about the movie synopsis. For anybody in this world, and I'll be amazed, there's probably only like 2 people in this world who haven't seen Spy Kids. I'm going to give you the story synopsis. So, 2 young children become spies in an attempt to save their parents, who are ex-spies from an evil mastermind. Armed with a bag of high-tech gadgets and out-of-this-world transport, Carmen and Junie will bravely jet through the air, dive under the seas, and crisscross the globe in a series of thrilling adventures on a mission to save their parents and maybe even the world. And that is your synopsis for Spy Kids. Ads for the cast. So the cast is brilliant. So you've got Alexa Pena Vega as Carmen Cortez. You got Daryl Sabra as Junie Cortez. Antonio Banderas as Gregorio Cortez. Carla Gringo as Ingrid Cortez. You've got Alan Cumming as Mr. Floop. Tony Shalhoub as Alexander Minion, Terry Hatcher as Miss Gorenko, and Cheats Martin from Cheats and Chong as Felix Gum, Robert Patrick as Mr. Lisp, Danny Trejo as Machete, which a bit of trivia for you now, and I'm sure I'll mention it later. This is the first, and I mean the first sort of beginning of the character Machete. After this move, like if you look at the sort of the history of the Machete franchise, the first appearance of Machete is here in Spy Kids, and then he goes off and makes his own movies. And if you watch the Machete movies, they're not for kids at all. They're really not for kids. But this is the first introduction of Machete, which I love. I think that's fantastic. That's so Robert Rodriguez, to be honest. But anyway, yeah. So Danny Trejo, first sort of introduction as Machete in this film. And that's it for your cast. As for the production, so this is another one of the films that I didn't think there'd be a lot of production on, but I found loads, and I'm really glad for it because, again, it's a movie that I love and adore. So, Robert Rodriguez's first family-oriented production was the short film Bedhead in 1991. Since the release of El Mariachi a year later in 1992, he decided to make the same type of full-length family feature as he experienced in his childhood, saying, "People who saw my short Bedhead have been saying, when are you going to do a movie like that? I was trying to figure one out. I thought I would do a movie of that kind of action and adventure." Rodriguez first thought of the idea for Spy Kids in 1994, but held off on making the movie because of the special effects he needed to incorporate into the story. Rodriguez explained, "I felt like it was going to be a big movie, effects-wise, and I didn't have any effects experience back then. I wanted to learn how to do all those things." The effects he used in the movie overall are 500 effects shots, which earn him an additional credit in the credits for special effects. The lack of family movies was what fueled Rodriguez's desire to make Spy Kids and called family films a neglected genre, which I agree. Rodriguez knew he wanted Spy Kids to be something more than a typical family film and stayed away from the root canal experience that family films oftentimes deliver to adults because family makers cater to children and forget about the parents sitting in the movie theaters as well. Rodriguez says he set out to deliver a strong family message at the core of Spy Kids and to make his movie as entertaining and imaginative as possible. He stated that he wanted to restore a more magical element in children's movies, adding that, "This is why the whole movie feels like a little kid's creative dream. I really wanted it to be, and to make it like a child created this movie. He didn't want the main protagonist to be the type of kids in movies you want to smack around." Which I agree with him there. Like, it does feel like a kid made this. It does feel like a kid's imaginative wet dream without being so vulgar. You know what? But you see what I'm trying to say. Rodriguez's favourite movie as a child was Escape to Witch Mountain, and admits that film, alongside Willy Wonka, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and the James Bond films, influenced and inspired him while he was working on Spy Kids. His initial plan for the film was children initially not knowing their parents were spies until they had to save their captured parents, and an antagonist with the juvenile fantasticism of Willy Wonka. He noted the villain's imaginativeness was the man who seems to be the main bad guy at first, turns into a protagonist, and his comedic sidekick becomes the main villain. The Fum Fums were based on drawings that Rodriguez himself drew when he was an adolescent and won a contest for. He also got to put all of his childhood dreams in creating the Safe House, the NIX Super Gumpy, and the RX Express, for which has 4 parts, each written and shot by a different director. Rodriguez's portion featured Antonio Banderas But it was also about a family whose costumes started the thought process that led to Spy Kids. While filming Four Rooms, which is a brilliant movie, by the way, if you haven't seen it, it's fantastic. Rodriguez has cast Banderas first and then looked for the best child actors he could find. The mother was hired last and picked based on her resemblance to the kids, which was why the family in that film had an Asian mother, as one of the children was Asian. Rodriguez was in the exact same situation with Spy Kids when casting the family members in that film, specifically the two main protagonists, and was adamant that he wanted actors who were at least half Latin in the background. By late September 1999, he had narrowed down his choices to Dillian Sabra and Alexa Vega. Originally, at some point during screen testing, Sabra's hair was dyed black to match the hair of his on-screen dad, Antonio Banderas, until it was decided to dye Carla Gugino's hair red instead, and since Sabra is a redhead. Which works. Rodriguez started writing the script at the end of 1998, which my birth year, and turned it in 1999. Changes such as altered lines and new dialogue were made until release. Although Rodriguez had the Spy Kids idea in mind for years, actual production wasn't planned to begin until October 1999, which was then pushed to March 2000. During the time between the original 1999 start date and the new 2000 start date, Rodriguez traveled to Chile and the Bahamas to shoot second unit photography for Spy Kids. Production of Spy Kids was plagued with setbacks. Principal photography was delayed for 15 months, and its digital effects required labor-intensive post-production. Filming took place during the summer of 2000 and ran for 67 days and finished in 48 days. Wow, fair play to him. It was shot in and around central Texas, with some exterior shots done in South America, and employed nearly 300 crew members and more than 1,500 extras from around the state, included Richard Linklater and Mike Judge, who were friends of Rodriguez. Austin Film Society board members and longtime Rodriguez champions like the Austin Chronicles Lewis Black and UT radio television film professor Charles Ramirez Berg also appeared in the film. Rodriguez spent the next few months working on a rough cut and tinkering with the movie's effects. He put together the teaser trailer himself, which hit theaters in November 2000, immediately generating buzz. Rodriguez was thrilled but not surprised by the overall response. He says, "I always felt that would be my most successful film," he said years later. And I think it probably is, or thereabouts. But yeah, that's all I have for the production on Spy Kids. To be honest, like I said, this movie is just one of those that every time I watch it, I see something new. Maybe it's because I've grown up now, maybe because I'm an adult, but it's one of those films that you rewatch it, and you go, "Oh God, I didn't notice that bit before. I didn't notice that bit before." And it could be I was not paying attention, or I was taken away with the whimsy and like the sort of the adventureness of it all. But I just noticed new bits here and there, and I don't know. It's just one of the films that, for me, just matures more. As I get older, the film just changes in what it means. When I was younger, I reflected more to the kids. Now I've gotten older, I reflect more to, Antonio Banderas and to the parents, to them. Even though I'm not a parent myself, I relate more to them as adults, and I see from the perspective of theirs and why they kept it a secret and stuff like that. So it's just a movie that just gets better as I get older, really. So I'm really excited to watch this film. I haven't seen it in a while. I think last time I saw it, I think was around last year, potentially. So I'm excited for this one. So without further ado, I'm going to go off and watch Spy Kids, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about all things mystery and, the floobs and the fum-fums, and it's going to be absolutely brilliant. So, without further ado, I'll see you all very, very soon. And welcome back, everybody. So I've just finished watching Spy Kids, and honestly, it's such a nostalgia trip. But at the same stage, it's also very strange watching this movie again as an adult. Like I said, at the moment, as recording, I'm 27, soon to be 28. My sister also shares the January month with me as my birthday. My sister's now, and she'll hate me to say this, so I won't say the date specifically, but she's in her 30s. And the reason I bring that up, and there is a point to it, because I know that she's listening. She's going to be sitting there but scowling at the Alexa, be like, why are you bringing this up for? Trust me, Faye, there's a reason. It's funny watching this movie again as a grown up, somebody who, for the longest time, had the older sister, was the younger sibling, and just seeing how brilliant the two sort of child actors were and how brilliant they were able to play a brother and sister role. They were calling each other names, making fun of each other, sort of doing sort of they're making fun of each other, but kind of just like playing tricks on each other. Junie would mimic Carmen, and she'd hate that and irritate each other, and they got it brilliantly. And as I was watching it, it's kind of funny because that's the dynamic me and my sister had, to be honest. For years, up until before my younger brother was born, me being the youngest and she only being a couple of years older than me, it was that dynamic of like, oh, I don't want to hang around with you anymore because you're not cool, because you're a baby, you still watch cartoons, and I'm older and I'm all into Britney Spears and all that other stuff. So you had that dynamic, and it was just funny kind of reflecting on my childhood of growing up with my sister, and actually watching Spy Kids with my sister and feeling like Junie as I watched it. Because again, I was always scared of everything. I was a worry. I never got worry warts. Funny enough, like I always found it quite interesting when I was younger as well. This idea of like, because his hands sweat all the time, he gets warts, and I think, I'm always worried. I'm always scared, but I don't seem to get warts. So I couldn't relate to that part, but like I could relate to Junie, and I think my sister could probably relate to Carmen as well, because again, being the older sibling, being somebody who's older, wanted to, didn't want to hang around me anymore because I wasn't cool. Didn't think that anything else was cool apart from her and her friends, which was, again, normal for kids and that sort of thing. So, and I didn't have that many kids, that many friends in school. And I had my cartoons and my figures like Ben 10 and all my other little sort of dolls and stuff like that. So, again, watching it again, I'm sitting there thinking, oh, wow, I related a lot to Junie when I was younger. And that, even though I was about to say our situation was the same, it wasn't that same because our parents aren't and weren't spies, sadly. But, I could relate to the fact of, I understood what they were going through, and the child actors did a brilliant job of playing not just, obviously, children, but also siblings so well, which I wanted to mention, and that's what made it so weird watching it again. Be like, oh god, yeah, I've had this sort of dynamic with my sister for about 10 years until my brother was born. So it was interesting as well. Going back, like I said, I haven't seen this movie from start to finish in a very, very long time, and I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it. Spy Kids is brilliant because you have the action of a Robert Rodriguez movie, but also you've got the action of an action pack epic sort of adventure spy thriller movie, and it doesn't turn it down. It doesn't sort of be like, oh yeah, this is a big action movie, but it's a kids film, so we've got to turn it down. Like, it doesn't. It keeps that level all the way through, from the very beginning all the way to the end. You still keeps that level of intense spy sort of cool action. You've got the gadgets, you've got the code names, you've got all the different vehicles. It's fun. And I love that because I love how Rodriguez, he didn't turn it down. It wasn't the fact of, oh yeah, we'll have a few spy things here and there, but it's a kid's film, so we're going to make it silly and goofy. Like, those silly and goofy moments are there, but the action is still peak. As I said, as he was aiming for, it's a movie that all people can watch, not just for kids. It's a family film. And it is. Like, adults can watch it and enjoy it and find things that they like and enjoy, and kids can watch it and find things that they like and enjoy. And I did. From when I was a kid, I watched it, and like I said, I could relate to sort of the child actors and Carmen and Junie, because again, my situation was kind of the same. But also as an adult watching it, I'm like, look, I love the action, I love the gadgets, I love what's his name now? Yeah, I'm completely blanking on it. Floob, what's his name? The actress playing Floob, what's his name? IMDb, you're failing me at the moment. That's it, Alan Cumming as Floob. Brilliant acting. And like, it reminds me of at one stage, I'm sitting there, this feels like Doctor Who, when he's got his cloak and he's running down the hall. Brilliant. The set design is amazing. I love Floop's castle. It's a mix between like a coral but also something that a child would make, but also it feels very wacky and zany. And Floob is a very wacky and zany sort of childish sort of villain, but it also is quite sort of going through his own existential sort of midlife crisis sort of thing. Whereas like he doesn't know who he is, like, you know, he's got this whole world domination plan, but he's really all he cares about is his cartoon show that he does and the Fooglies and stuff like that. So he's focused on that. I'm like, look, world domination was your idea. He says it to Minion. Like, I'm more focused on this, and like, so he's having like a midlife crisis, and again, adults can relate to that. And there was just so many things that I noticed watching it now as an adult, being about the same age that my dad was when I was born, by the way. I think my dad was about 27, 28 when I was born. And watching it again through those sort of eyes of what he would have saw, what he probably would have thought. Yeah, there are things here for adults as well. There's even like, I won't say overly sexual, but there's even like a moment when Ingrid is with Gregorio, and you know they get in their spy gear, they're going on their mission. Oh no, so it's before that, and Gregorio's like, "Well, no, I've Devlin said I've got to go on a mission, so I can't say no. I've got to go." And then Ingrid, who's played by Carla, she's basically like, "Oh, well, you know, I want to go on an adventure," and he's like, "Well, no, you know, who's going to look after the children?" Because being very much like a dad, being like, "Well, no, you stay here. I'll go save the world. You know, you look after the children." And then she does this whole sexy thing where she's like, "Are you gonna say no to me?" And she goes up towards him, gives him like this like sort of cuddle. She gets in his ear, and I don't speak Spanish, but I can tell what she was saying was some naughty stuff, right? Some very cheeky, R-rated kind of stuff, because he was going weak at the knees. He was like, what about the children? Or what if they, you know, sort of thing, what if they walk in and see us, sort of thing. So I don't speak Spanish, but I know that what she was saying was I love you. She was saying more than that, okay? You know, and, you know, so there's moments there for the adults. And I just feel like first impressions, really, Spy Kids, I can see and understand why it's a movie that has stood the test of time and why it's so widely loved by children and by people from my generation, but also why it's such a good sort of movie, because it's a movie for the family. It's basically a film that gets it right from the get-go. It realizes what it is, which is it's a spy movie with kids, doesn't tone it down, is easy and fun to watch for the adults as it is for kids. You know, you've got the stuff for the kids, the silly stuff with the fums, and you know, like the moments when you've got like younger kids, if they've got siblings as well, that sort of sibling rivalry, you know, and the name calling and stuff like that. Yeah, we've all had it. And the older sibling thinking they're better than the younger sibling wanting to prove them that they're not like worthless or young or silly or weak or anything like that, or they're a baby, want to prove that they're just as big as their big sort of brother or sister. And also there's so much you can relate to. So no matter who you are, what kind of child you are, how old you are, young you are, everybody can relate to it somewhere, and everybody can really watch and enjoy it. And I love that. I do. And also, one thing that I realized while I was sort of before I started watching the movie, after I'd done the introduction, I was doing a little bit more research to kind of look into sort of the behind the scenes of the movie. I didn't realize this when I was younger, and I don't know how I didn't realize it. But these movies came out back to back. So you had Spy Kids 1 from like 2001, Spy Kids 2 was then 2002, and then Spy Kids 3 Game Over was 2003. I didn't realize they were back to back. I thought there was a break, because I remember watching Spy Kids 2 and just feeling like it was a bigger, more grander sort of adventure, higher budget, which more so likely was true. But also the fact that the kids seemed older, they seemed more mature. Like Junie no longer felt like a young kid anymore. You know, Cartman felt older, even though they've probably only aged a year. They felt older, and the adventure that they went on and their maturity really showed. Obviously, I know we're not here to talk about the sequels, but it's just kind of strange that the fact that these films were shot back to back, came out back to back year, but they just feel that the tone for each one of them just gets like more mature as the kids get maturer. And that's why I always thought when I was younger that it was like you had Spy Kids 1, and then a year or two later, then you got sort of Spy Kids 2 and then vice versa. Because I generally thought that Spy Kids 3D came out like 2005, 2006. I really didn't realize it was 2003. But again, we're not here to talk about sort of the sequels. We're here to talk about Spy Kids. So yeah, first impressions, I loved it. Brilliant. In my opinion, you just can't go wrong with Spy Kids. For anybody that doesn't know really overall arc in the story, you've got Gregorio and Ingrid. They are some of the world's best spies, and they're both sent on a mission to take each other out, to assassinate each other. And again, the movie basically begins like this. The movie begins where Ingrid is telling Carmen a story about sort of spies and lovers, and as she's telling this story, she tells how these two spies were meant to kind of take each other out, but they just kind of fell in love and they couldn't do it. And because they were both on the opposite sides, on the enemy sides, they couldn't be seen together. So the only times that they were ever together or was able to see each other is if like they had to go on missions to certain places like Paris and stuff like that. They would meet each other, but they could never be seen with each other. But they had like obviously spy ways of dealing with things. And I love this because the beginning of this movie feels like a Rodriguez's sort of movie. The shots, the way it is done, the way the orchestra, the music, it feels very much like Rodriguez, right? And I could watch a whole movie of just them two, but then it kind of brings up and the tone changes and it's like, oh, well, Carmen goes, well, why didn't they, why did they decide to do it? Why did they get married? Is it a better life? And then Ingrid's like, oh, yeah, it has ups and downs, but, it's a lot better life, for the past. Obviously, Carmen thinks it's just a story, but really, we as the audience know that it's the real sort of McCoy. It's the real story of what actually happened with Gregorio and Ingrid. And then from there, you can tell that they've been sort of retired for 9 years, but they still have that urge. They still have that craving, that sort of thing of like, I really want to do spy work, but I can't because the kids. But they still have the spy equipment. They still have the gadgets around. So that they might have left that spy world, but the spy world hasn't left them. And Gregorio is like, look, I don't really want to go on this mission, but a lot of sort of agents, a lot of friends are going missing, and I'm the only one. And Devlin has said I've got to go. And obviously that's the moment that Ingrid is like being all sort of cheeky and flirty and being like, oh, you can't say no to me. And he takes her along and they get taken by Floop. And then the kids are and this is kind of where the story comes to the kids, where they slowly start to learn about who their parents are, about their parents are being spies and that sort of thing. But there's also a moment before that where you can tell that Ingrid and Gregorio, specifically Gregorio, is sort of not, even though it's been 9 years, is struggling into still being in that world, trying to be a civilian. Because like Junie's being picked on, Carmen, she's skipping school, she's going out, and we find out later that she kind of doesn't want to be part of the family. She doesn't think the family's cool. Again, young child sort of stuff. So she keeps trying to run, like skipping school with her friends, trying to live a better, different life, that sort of thing. Even though she's about 9 years old. She's still a kid. Like, I don't know what thing of life she thinks she can have at that age, but still. And like, obviously, Junie's getting bullied, and the kid's bullying him, and he gets out. And as he gets out, he meets the dad of the bully, and obviously he's a big guy, and he's like, "What are you gonna do, chief?" That sort of thing. And in his head, he has this like vision of like, "I'm just gonna throw you through that window, and my son's gonna love me, and all these kids are gonna love me, and cheering." But really, it wasn't real. And the guy goes, "What are you gonna do?" And he goes, "Nothing." And Junie walks away sad, and it's this moment where like you can tell that Gregorio, he's like, look, I could cleave you in two, I could tell you, I could pretzel you, I could raspberry ripple you, if I really wanted to, but he can't because he's living that civilian life. He can't let on who he was, especially to his kids and that sort of thing. And it's one of them things like you have this moment where they want to be more than just sort of the parents. They want to be like cool parents, but they're not. They're living a plain, ordinary sort of basic life. So when the kids find out, they're like, well, there's no way our parents can be spies. They're not cool enough. Like, this makes no sense. Because it's true. Like, let's be honest with ourselves. I love my parents. I do. I think they're great. They're brilliant. I love them. Obviously, they're my parents, mum and my dad. But at that age, if somebody said to me, "Oh, your parents are spies," like, nah. Not my mum, not my dad. They're not cool enough. And you would, you know what I mean? anybody would. I'm sure anybody listening to this, if you think back to your parents back when you were younger, about who they were, what they did for a living, that sort of thing, you would sit there and go, no, not my parents. They're not cool enough. So again, you can relate there as a kid because again, you watch it as a kid and you'd be like, no, no. But then you might even think, in fact, maybe they are. Maybe they're that good at being spies that you just believe that there's no way they could be. So that's what I mean. Like the writing here and the storytelling is so well done. Where it's like anybody in any level, adult, child, can relate and think back to their childhood and think, no, not my parents. My parents wouldn't have been cool. Which I love. So as they go through, they realize who their parents are, and they quickly start to mature in. And like Carmen's like, oh my god, my parents actually are cool. So I want to be a spy. This is the adventure that Carmen's been looking for, searching for. And again, this is where you get those moments between Junie and Carmen, where like Carmen thinks she's the big sister, so she's like, oh, Junie, you can't be a spy because you're a wimp. Junie, you can't do this. Junie, you're an idiot. Junie, you're a thunderhead, and all these other sort of name calling and things like that. And it's actually funny because, like, Junie makes mistakes, but like he saves the day in the end. Junie is the one that saves the day and actually does majority of the stuff, to be honest. I love the bit as well where they're in the sort of little mini submarine fish thing, and he's sort of pressing buttons, and before, like, he's already pressing buttons off screen, and then Carmen's like, Junie, don't push nothing, and she turns around and he's like, Junie, he's already pushing buttons, because you would do. I was the same when I was a kid. If me and my sister was in that situation, I'd be touching buttons and doing things I shouldn't be doing. The same thing where it's like they get into the pod and their uncle, who's not their uncle, Felix, basically said to him, like, press the blue button, then the red button. So what does Junie do? He presses the red button because he doesn't listen. Because at that age, what kid did, And then his sister's making fun of him. He's like, you idiot, you were meant to push the blue button. He's like, I can't see the blue button. And it's back there, but then she pushes it and all that. And it's just one of those things. It's like, yeah, you would do. Same sort of moment. Carmen is sleeping in the pod, and Junie's there, bored. He's pushing buttons. He's making food. I love one bit that made me laugh as a kid, and it made me giggle now at 27. Was he has a poop on the toilet, it flushes it, it goes in, and the little robot goes, "Now flushing your poop," which makes me giggle because I'm a child. And then you get Junie walking away going, "Yeah," like same, poop, different day sort of thing. But I love it. I do. I just think the writings are great. I think the characters are great. Again, Machete, Danny Trejo, brilliantly portrayed here. I still find it very incredible, the fact that this is the first introduction to Machete, considering that the Machete series is not for kids at all. But, maybe one day I'll look into that series because it's a brilliant series of movies. I haven't seen them in years either, but like brilliant series of movies. I just find it really cool. But, Danny Trejo is brilliant in this. Antonio Banderas, brilliant. The kids are brilliant. Tony Shalhoub as Minion, brilliant. Alan Cumming as Floop, brilliant. Everybody in this cast is just great. Even like the side cast, like you got Robert Patrick's in this as Mr. Lisp, right? Which every time I say that name, I can't help not put a lisp on. Lisp, I know, not to make fun of anybody who has lisp, but I just can't have not do it, Mr. Lisp. Anyway, he even makes a joke about it in the movie as well. I think one of the ladies, Miss Krudenko, she ends up saying, "Oh, Mr. Lisp," and he goes, "No, it's Lisp. Let Lisp." So they knew what they were doing. Rodriguez knew what he was doing. Robert did, but where was I? So I got lost sidetracked on Lisp. Anyway, that's it. All the actors, all the characters, everybody in this movie is just brilliant. It's fun. They're all having fun, and that's the main thing. You've still got like the parts of the kids, but you've also got the parts of the adults when it goes to the like sort of Gregorio and Ingrid when they're talking about this whole idea of their kids and how is it that our kids are going to be safe, or how is it that the kids save the day? One of them still wears diapers to bed, and the other one has like plays with dolls and stuff like that. And again, these are conversations that adults have, I'm sure, parents specifically, about their children and worrying about their children and stuff. So, I can't at the moment because I don't have kids. But maybe one day, if I ever do have kids and I watch this movie again, there could be a moment there where I can sit and relate and be like, I have those conversations with my partner as well. So I'm sure there is more to get out of this movie for myself, when I'm older, when I, eventually do have kids, if I ever do have kids, But yeah, I think it's brilliant. I think this film is really good, really, really good. I was going to say a surprise, but it's not really a surprise because, again, Robert Rodriguez, he's brilliant in everything that he does. Love him or hate him, I just think every movie he makes is just like top notch. He's like the guy knows how to make a movie, and he knows his audience for who the movie is made for, and he goes for it. And you either love it or hate it; it doesn't matter. It's always going to be good. It's always going to be something where you're like, that's brilliant. So I am a Robert Rodriguez fan. And again, the production design, the Fooglies look incredible. Floop looks incredible. He feels like Doctor Who when he walks through, and his sort of cloak is fluttering. Makes me wish that we had Alan Cumming as the Doctor. I know he recently played Mr. Ringading in the newer series of Doctor Who with Ncuti Gatwa, but I'd be great as the Doctor. To be honest, I'd be all here for it. Even with an older Alan Cumming now that he's all grey and that, I'd still think he's brilliant. So there was that, and obviously Floop's Castle and the gadgets were great. You have these like what? Okay, this is one thing I see online all the time, and it's something that I have to bring up. I wasn't going to, but I'm going to have to bring it up. This movie came out 2001. It's now 2026. We've been waiting 25 years thereabouts. Yeah, am I right? My maths. I got dyscalculia, so if my maths is off, sue me. But let's say, for argument's sake, 25 years, right? Since this movie came out, we still do not have the hydration technology from this movie. I watched this film, and when she gets that slab out, and mind you, I was sitting there thinking, I even paused it. I couldn't see any writing on the slab of what it is, just the colours. Now, granted, the colours are McDonald's colours, but still, looking at that, how does she know what that is? That could have been anything. Those colours could have been soup and bread. You know what I mean? Like tomato soup and bread. To go with like the sort of yellow and red colouring. She didn't know it was going to be a Big Mac, but that's not the point. She gets this slab, she sticks it in there, and it goes do, and the next thing you know, she has a Big Mac. Which, mind you, by the way, they never look like that. They never look like the photo. I don't go to McDonald's anymore. I'm not a fan of McDonald's or fast food. But when I used to as a kid, you look at the pictures, I want a Big Mac. And then you get the Big Mac, and it doesn't look like that at all. It generally looks like the guy wiped it with his arse and threw it on the floor, and then built the burger and just threw everything in there. It doesn't look like it never looks like the picture. I've never had a Big Mac that looked like the picture. Ever. It's always tasted okay, but it's always just been a mess. But again, I digress. That's just me going on a TED talk. Anyway, I want to go back to my other TED talk about this dehydrator. So she puts it in, comes out, looks brilliant, looks perfect. They're eating it. And I'm sitting there thinking, it's 25 years. We still don't have that. And to be honest, it goes back to the Future. Same technology in Back to the Future where she gets was it sort of pizza up? I think it's pizza up, sort of pizza. And she goes, hydrate number 4, please. And the next thing you know, and there it is, a full pizza. And that was like back in the 80s. And that was actually meant to be 2015. We're meant to have hoverboards as well. We still haven't got them, mind you. But that's another soapbox for another day. But it's just that I saw it, I was like, we don't have that technology. But that's so cool. And again, it goes back to the fact of what I was saying. Watching this movie as a kid, seeing that, again, it goes back to the Future as well. Seeing the stuff in that movie, 2015, being a year to idolise, and 2015 came and went, and I was disappointed that we didn't have hoverboards. We don't even have Pepsi Perfect, which is I know we did for 2015, but it wasn't something that Pepsi ever carried on. It was just a thing for the movie. Anyway, we're talking about Spy Kids. Can't go into sort of Back to the Future. Anyway, we still don't have that technology. And it was that thing of like, as a kid though, it was like, this is the future. This is what we could have. This is what I'm going to get. We're going to have jetpacks, and we're going to have like glasses that like tell us and trophies. And technically we do have them. I remember Google tried to make them, but they couldn't. And I'm sure some other I think Microsoft had some glasses as well. So like, the technology's there. We just haven't got it to be able to miniaturize it yet. But like, we do technically have that technology. The virtual room, technically we do kind of have that. We still have to wear headsets, but we have like AR, augmented reality, which I went to university to study. So technically we do have augmented reality, with headsets and stuff like that. So that technology's still around. But what still gets me is that dehydrator. it would just be brilliant, wouldn't it? Like it would kind of take the artistry out of food. Let's be honest with you, but just being able to get a slab and go, oh, I'm hungry, I can't be asked to cook, and to throw that in, and then 2 seconds later you have like a chicken dinner. You know what I mean? Which they do actually. I think in this one, the guy actually puts one in, and next he pulls out a rotisserie chicken full of veg and carrots and stuff like that. I'm like, that looks gorgeous. You know what I mean? How easy with that? Instead of like having to do a pop noodle or something like that, just stick it in the like the rehydrator, not the microwave, and 2 seconds later, you've got a Big Mac. There'd be more fat people, admittedly, but it'd be great. But yeah, but that goes to the spy stuff, the gadgets, the imagination of Rodriguez, but also the imagination of a child watching it. The fum-fums, I love the fum-fums. I love how they keep coming up in all the movies as well, which I love. And even the second movie, they really sort of go further into the gadgets and technology and that sort of thing, because obviously probably would have had a bigger budget. But yeah, overall thoughts, I just love this movie. I do. There is so much to love and enjoy about it, and like there is so much nostalgia on it. Like I said with the dehydrator, people are still talking about this movie through memes and stuff like that online. It's still a film that holds a lot of weight, specifically with my generation. I feel like it's a movie that's going to hold weight for a lot of time. I'd say this movie is probably, I was going to say an almost cult classic, but I'd say it's probably close to being a cult classic at this stage, because it's a movie that people can all pretty much agree it's a pretty good film. It's good for all ages, and yeah, I love it. I love Spy Kids, and I wasn't planning on to, but I had that much fun doing research for this movie and just watching it and just getting nostalgic. That I do. I want to look into the other two movies. I want to look into sort of The Lost World. That was great. That has one of the most sort of out of like theoretical sort of what is the meaning of life sort of questions in it of all time of any movie ever. And then the third movie goes into the 3D world and has Sylvester Stallone, that's a bad impression, Adrian, sort of thing, in that movie as the toy maker. So yeah, I don't know when I'm going to get around to them. Will it be this year? Will it not be this year? I don't know, but they are definitely going on the list, and I will look into the other Spy Kids movies. But yeah, I just had so much fun. It was brilliant. It was a great time. And hopefully, if you joined the interlude, you went off and you watched the movie with me, hopefully you had the same sort of moment. If you did, by all means, please let me know in the comments down below. Like on Spotify, you can write comments. Write down below, let me know if you've seen this movie with me. Do you agree with me? Do you not agree with me? Can you relate to Carmen and Junie? Did you have the same sort of situation, having an older sister, being the younger or older brother even, and being the younger child and that sort of thing? Would you believe that your parents were spies? Again, let me know down below, either in the comments down below on YouTube or in the comments below on Spotify. I'd really love to hear back off you all. But before we wrap things up, I did say I'm going to get some trivia, and I did manage to find some. So, director Robert Rodriguez edited the movie in his garage. His garage is really a state-of-the-art editing studio that is in his home, but he calls it his garage. One thing I want to add about Robert Rodriguez, which I love, so he made Alita Battle Angel, which is a brilliant movie, completely underrated, and one day I will look into it. And I'm still waiting for that sequel, Rob, but if you ever listen to this, we need the sequel. And I think he wants to do the sequel as well. Anyway, he built a lot of the sets for that movie in his back garden. And if I remember correctly, I think he did a podcast last year, and somebody brought that up, and he goes, yeah, the little town, the little sort of city that he built for that movie, it's still in his back garden. It's still there, He's just waiting for the sort of the script and sort of the funding, and then he's ready to go as soon as they are. You know what I mean? Which is great. And then I think he did a whole sort of tour of his house, and he still has a lot of the props from his movies. He still has the suits from like the third Spy Kids movie that they wear, which I thought was brilliant. And I love that as a director, that they love their work so much that they put the work and they keep the props, they keep a lot of the stuff. He put in the effort into to build the set for Alita Battle Angel in his back garden to keep down the cost so that he could put more into the visuals and into the story and actors and stuff like that. I love that. And again, this is why I'm a Robert Rodriguez fan, is because you can tell in all his movies, he has a passion for movie making. He's a passion for films. This is why he's such a brilliant director. And I think I love him. Anyway, this movie stayed at number 1 in the US box office charts for 3 straight weeks. Carla, I always pronounce her last name really badly. I do apologize, Carla. Carla Gunino. Janino? I can't pronounce your last name. I'm sorry, darling. Was reluctant to accept the role of Ingrid Cortez. She felt she was too young at the age of 29 to have an 8-year-old boy and a 12-year-old daughter. Oh, so they were still. So she's 12. Oh, I thought she was 9. That makes more sense. Why they feel older in the later movies as well. Because again, they said they retired for 9 years in the movie, so I assumed that sort of they retired when Carmen was born, so I assumed she was 9. But overall, this kind of makes sense. Anyway, she thought that she was too young at 29 to have an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old child. Director Robert Rodriguez told her that his own mother had him and all his siblings by the time she was 30, and they were a similar age as the kids in the movie. She was reassured and ultimately accepted the role of Ingrid Cortez. The last Robert Rodriguez movie shot on film, post-production was this was the last movie that was shot on film. Post-production was done at George Lucas's Skywalker Ranch, where he introduced Rodriguez to high definition digital filmmaking. Robert Rodriguez said he went with Alexa Vega to see Mission Impossible 2 just before they started Spy Kids. He leaned over to her halfway through and said, "You're going to be so much cooler than Tom Cruise." The character in the film, Gregorio, Carmen, and Junior are named after family members of Robert Rodriguez's family. And Gregorio Cortez was the name of a famous Texan thief in the early 1900s. So that is your trivia for Spy Kids. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this one. I know I had a fantastic time. If you did and you want to see more, then please do give me a follow on Spotify and give me a subscribe on YouTube. Stick around. There's a lot more to come. I've got one more big surprise because like next week is my birthday. So I've got one more big surprise episode for my birthday, and it's a pure nostalgia movie for me, and I get a bit lost in that episode, to tell you the truth. I've already recorded the introduction. I get a bit lost in the reeds of nostalgia, so you've got to bear with me, but trust me, it's all passion, all love for the movie, for the main actor in it and everything. So it's going to be absolutely brilliant. So stick around for that. By all means, while you wait, check out my older stuff as well. And I've got more stuff coming in the future. Follow me on Twitter, howdybeans_pod. You can also follow me on TikTok if you want some shorter sort of side quest episodes from me. You know, shorter movie reviews, book reviews, video game reviews, things like that, nerdy things, then by all means follow me on Twitter at the Howdy Beans podcast for more shorter sort of review content there. And yeah, so thank you very much for joining me today. I had an absolutely brilliant time with Spy Kids, and hope to see you all next week for the final sort of surprise episode that I have in store for you for my 28th birthday. But until then, I'll see you all very soon. Bye-bye.